Word of God. Listen to Pastor Steve Pope from Calvary Baptist Church, Sunday mornings at 9 here on News Talk WSIC, or listen on demand at WSICnews.com.
Hello and welcome to Dollars and Cents, presented by North Main Financial. I'm your host, Joshua Dobi. Thank you so much for tuning in to us here at the 4 o'clock Eastern hour. Appreciate you doing that. You got one more hour if you're a 9 to 5er. Don't give up yet. They're paying you for it. You got to sprint through the finish line here, all right? But we're very thankful that you're including us along the way there, and hopefully we can get you to that point where you can call it a day and head home to stuff that's more important. So thank you so much for hanging with us here on Dollars and Cents, again presented by North Main Financial. As I mentioned, my name is Joshua Dobi. I'm a certified financial planner or a CFP professional. We're going to be talking on any number of subjects again here today. It's one of my favorite times of the year. I guess I should say it with some regularity because it's earnings season. I know, for those of you who don't follow this kind of stuff as closely as we do here at North Main Financial, like, what is earnings season? Well, this is the time when companies are announcing what their earnings are for the quarter. And so it's kind of exciting for us on our end of things because you get to see where folks are. Got some good ones, got some not so good ones, but you're going to have to hang with us throughout the hour here as we bring that to you. But in doing so, we're going to be talking about different companies, different investment styles. We're going to be talking about funds, maybe even different structures for investing. That in doing so, very, very important to remember that nothing that we're talking about here is intended as a specific recommendation for you. Meaning that even though we're talking on these companies, and some we're going to be looking at in a favorable light, others are going to be looking at maybe a little bit more of a negative light. Again, it's not a recommendation either way to buy, sell, or hold those kinds of things. We strongly, strongly recommend that you reach out to your tax advisor, to your financial advisor, or if you'd like to reach out to us at North Main Financial Group, love to hear from you. Love to chat about your particular financial situation and to see if there are ways in which we might be able to be helpful to you. Online, you can find us at northmainfinancial.com. That's north like the direction, Main like the street, financial.com. Northmainfinancial.com. We have a contact page on there. Leave us an email address or a phone number. Let us know the most preferred and desirable ways for us to contact you. Again, at northmainfinancial.com. All right, let's get into it here. Hot headlines. We've been using this theme, if you will, rubric for all of you grammar folks that are sitting out there when we're talking about what's hitting our headlines here, the kinds of things that may be on your radar screen. Certainly they're on our radar screen. Also want to let you know, if you want to call into the studio here, perhaps you're seeing something on the headlines or you got a hot headline that you'd like for us to touch on. Can't promise all the time that we're going to get to it within the scope of the show, but certainly if I can include it along the lines of what we're doing here. Obviously, I can't give you individual advice. You know that, all right? But I can talk about general kinds of things and certainly the kinds of things that we're seeing on our end. 844-STUDIO-4. That's 844-788-3464. 844-788-3464. Again, here in the studio. If you got something that's hot on the headlines you'd like us to touch on here, go ahead and give us a call. We'll see if we can include it. All right, as I mentioned, it's earnings season. Big time of the year. Now, it comes around 4 times a year. Actually, it's more like 6, but I'm not going to get into fiscal and calendar year differentials. It happens to be the time when a whole bunch of companies are sharing their earnings. And we're really seeing a very interesting number of movements here. Some of them expected, some of them not so expected. We're going to be talking about company names that you know, and we're going to be talking about the kinds of things that probably are going to be indicative, at least in part, or at least among the variables, indicating what we're going to be looking at market-wise for the balance of the year. That's a little teaser. I want you to hang around. That's probably what we're going to do here as we get a little bit later on the show, certainly into the second half of this week's Dollars and Cents. But let's go ahead. I want to touch on a data point here before we get into specific company earnings. And the Chief, Justin, during the Good Morning LKN show, which, by the way, if you haven't listened to Good Morning LKN, tune in Mondays to Fridays, 7 and 9. We've got producer Bill and the Chief, Justin, who are talking on all manner of things here, especially hyper-local kinds of things here in the greater Charlotte, Lake Norman region. But he touched on something just before they closed out today. A data point that's been high on my radar screen. I'm glad he mentioned it because it was something I wanted to mention here, and it's concerning. And I don't make macros out of micros. You know that, so I don't like to extrapolate too much on what I'm going to say next. But it's big in terms of the number of folks that it impacts and how far it stretches outside of the norm. It has to do with automobile or car loans, meaning loans that are taken out for the purchase of a vehicle. We're starting to see an uptick. Actually, when I say we're starting, we've really seen it here over the last year or so, but now we've crossed a certain line in terms of the number of car loans which are delinquent. Now, I'm not talking about cars which have been repossessed at this point. Those numbers tend to lag a little bit. Those numbers also do tend to follow, not always, but they do tend to follow whenever we see delinquencies perk up. And when I say perk up, I mean, unfortunately, a larger number of folks who are greater than 60 days behind on their automobile loan crossed over the 6% major. And when we talk about 6%, we're talking about 6% of outstanding car loans, which are now delinquent or over 60 days due. And again, not an encouraging sign if you're tracking at home and you're watching these kinds of things like we watch them at North Main Financial. That's a 3-decade high, meaning hasn't been that high in 30 years. And again, I don't want to make a macro out of a micro, but obviously we're talking about a dramatic number of cars here across the country, which are now folks are behind on their loans. We're seeing a number of other data points that happen to be lining up with those kinds of concerns. Not looking at the glass half empty. You've been listening to Dollars and Cents long enough. You know I'm a glass half full kind of guy when I'm looking at things, but I also do want to call things what they are. And so when we look at that, and then we look at the kinds of things like revolving debt on credit cards, which is up almost 30% here year over year, we're lining up some things as far as the consumer is concerned. You know, I pound on the consumer. And I do that meaning in terms of looking at what the consumer is doing, because the consumer is so indicative of what's happening in our country. To remember, 2/3, 3/4, roughly in between there, between 66 and 75% of our GDP or our gross domestic product is how people spend. And we're going to be talking about the GDP. We've got a pretty crazy number here earlier today, as of the time of this live broadcast, or if you happen to be listening to the recording. We're going to talk about that a little bit later in the show, and be interested to hear your thoughts on that as well. But coming back to the automobile loans here, and I am spending some time on it before we get into the companies, because it is something that we're watching very closely. Now, we want to be careful not to think in straight lines. You hear me say that all the time here on Dollars and Cents. Often we'll talk about with regards to performance in the stock market, right? Market's going up. We tend to think that the market's going to keep going up. Market's going down. Tend to think the market's going to keep going down. We do. Linear thought, not good, because things run in cycles. It happens to be true with regards to these data points as well, with regards to, we're looking at automobile loans. But it's definitely something that we're keeping on our radar screen. So I want you to be aware of it. Also, before we leave the whole automobile industry, very important for us to, I think, make you aware, if you're not aware already, because we talked about the UAW, the United Auto Workers strike against the big three here in the U.S., General Motors, Ford, and Stellantis, which is the old Chrysler Dodge. There has been a report, actually multiple reports as of the time of this broadcast, that the UAW and Ford have come to a tentative agreement. And there is some speculation that that agreement will be used as a little bit as a benchmark by GM and by Stellantis to resolve the strike between the UAW and the big three. So that's big news. That's big news for certainly for the workers who are involved in that strike, but then also with regards to hopefully getting inventories back online for domestically made cars. That's going to be a big deal. So we're watching that as well, and that's, you know, especially when we're looking at pricing strength with regards to automobiles. If we get shorter on inventory, we get into a space where inventories get tight again, like what we experienced there during the time of COVID. That can be challenging, and we get really crazy stuff. I was talking with somebody today who was out looking for a vehicle, and the ask price was $10,000 over the sticker. $10,000 over the sticker price. I mean, my goodness, but we had it. We had it there during COVID. We had it even with housing, with real estate as well. During the time of COVID, we had, you know, all these offers over asking so that folks could secure the home that they desired there. We got away from that. That cooled off, which is good. That's healthier, but it's still out there. And certainly if inventories get tight, we might be seeing that again. So definitely on our radar screen there, definitely the kinds of things that we're keeping in mind when we're looking at what the consumer is doing. So important. We're going to be watching that especially as we get into the Christmas shopping season. I know it's going to be Halloween next week. I'm going to be talking all things Christmas after that. Appreciate so much you listening here on Dollars and Cents, here on WSIC News Talk Now.
More of Dollars and Cents with certified financial planner Joshua Dobi is coming up on WSIC.
Here's your WSIC community calendar. The WSIC yard sale is this weekend. Come by the radio station and enjoy a day of fun. The world-famous Pat Shannon will be hosting a special edition of the Home Ad Show. Live music, food trucks, bouncy houses. Selling starts at 6 a.m. this Saturday. Yard sale spots are free. The WSIC yard sale, 1117 Radio Road in Statesville. Saturday from 6 a.m. until 2 p.m. Pumpkin picking at Kerrigan Farms. Experience the pumpkin patch at Kerrigan Farms by booking your experience now at kerriganfarms.com. kerriganfarms.com for a pumpkin picking adventure. Santa is coming to town. Schedule your time to take pictures with Santa at Birkdale Village. Spots are limited and must be scheduled in advance. Santa will be at Birkdale between November 19th and Christmas Eve. Appointments include time with Santa and 8 digital images from a professional photographer. For more info and to schedule your time with Santa, visit birkdalevillage.com. Want to enjoy a night of magic? Eric Jones, a worldwide award-winning magician, is coming to Kane Center for the Arts this Saturday. Buy your tickets before they sell out. kanearts.org. Eric Jones, the magician, this Saturday. Doors open at 7 p.m. kanearts.org. Have an event you'd like to tell people about? Yard sales, estate sales, and everything in between? Visit WSICnews.com and click on events to submit your event today.
The Renaissance Festival is back Saturdays and Sundays now through November 19th. A non-stop outdoor family adventure. Huzzah! Tickets available online only at renfestinfo.com while supplies last.
And now for a look at your weather forecast from the WSIC Weather Center. Sunny skies today, but that temperature is going to continue to get warmer. We're looking around 78 degrees by the time we get to the afternoon. As you head through the rest of the day into the evening, clouds will roll in. We'll have partly cloudy conditions and an overnight low around 54. This has been your weather forecast from the WSIC Weather Center.
Call now to speak with certified financial planner Joshua Dobi at 844-STUDIO-4. It's dollars and cents on WSIC.
Hello and welcome back to Dollars and Cents presented by North Main Financial. I'm your host, Joshua Dobi. Thank you so much for hanging with us into the second quarter football reference. We're going to be talking football again here today. We've got our Panthers back online this weekend, and Producer Bill, I'm going to bring you in on this. There's a nasty rumor going around, and I'm hoping that you can dispel it for me, and it was presented this way to me today. Our Hornets, NBA, so we're shifting a little bit out of the NFL for just a moment. Our Hornets started up play again this week, and NBA coming back online. And there was a remark made in my presence earlier today that said that as of today, and the Hornets played their first game last night, that they may have more wins than our Panthers at this point. Now, I'm sure you're going to say that that was just a fallacy of somebody who's wanting to make me feel bad about our beloved Panthers. And any truth to that? Can you validate one way or the other?
I was actually a witness of the Hornets game last night.
Okay.
And I can confirm that they won.
Yes. Okay. That's the.
But I will not confirm or deny. We'll get it done this week.
I love how you stop there. You say, and I can confirm that the Hornets won.
Yeah, that's it. That's all you got.
And that's where it ends. I love it.
Yeah.
Now, we're ever hopeful for our Panthers this coming week here. They had an off week last week, coming back online this week, and I mean it's beautiful in Charlotte this weekend. So we got to be the weather's good. Panthers are back online. It's going to be a good outcome, I'm sure of it. And we'll be talking about that next week. But thanks so much for hanging with us into the second quarter here on Dollars and Cents presented by North Main Financial. And as I was going to break there, I was talking on some things that weren't particularly rosy. And I don't do that with the intent, again, of looking at things unnaturally negative, but to make you aware of them. And certainly with regards to the automobile loan end of things, that tends to be a fairly large macro indicator about where the consumer is. We're going to be watching that closely here through the next several weeks. All right, I told you we're going to talk about earnings season, one of my favorite times. I love doing it because we hear from so many companies that are talking about where they are from a quarterly standpoint. So if you're a publicly traded company, in most instances, you are required by the Securities and Exchange Commission to, on a quarterly basis, present your earnings or make public your earnings over the previous quarter. And if you're so inclined, you're also able to give forecasts. Of course, a lot of analysts, a lot of folks in the market really, really like that. Folks like me really, really like that kind of thing. So I'm gonna rapid fire a little bit here through several of them, and I'll be touching on fun stuff while we're doing it here. Let's start with Southwest Airlines. And before I do, Remember, this is not a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold anything I'm going to be talking about here. Some I'm going to talk about positive, other things we'll be talking about negative. It's not because I'm trying to induce you to buy, sell, or hold. Everybody's situation is unique. Very, very important to do your own research and to make sure that you make your decisions based upon your particular financial situation. All right, got through the caveat for all of our compliance folks. Southwest Airlines. Which, by the way, producer Bill, the ticker symbol for Southwest Airlines, I think is one of the best ones out there, and it is LUV. LUV. So the logo for Southwest includes a heart, right?
Yes.
And so the ticker symbol LUV, love.
Love that.
I mean, I love that. I mean, that's pretty cool. That's one of those ones that's pretty neat. We bump into them every once in a while. Like, that's pretty cool.
That is a nice one.
It is. I mean, for
Right.
General Motors, it's GM. Ford, it's F. Okay, I mean, those are kind of predictable, right? I mean,
Right.
LUV, yeah, we'll take it.
Just
Anyhow,
the little things, yeah.
just the little things. Anyhow, Southwest came out and they had reasonable earnings, but it really was with regards more towards their forward-looking kinds of expectations for the traveler. I don't think I need to tell you. Basically, since the restrictions due to COVID have been lifted, travel-wise, we have seen just an explosion of, and that's metaphorical, obviously, an explosion of travel here over the last couple of years. And we've seen it with regards to the number of folks who are flying. Boy, if you've been to any airport, if you have flown through or to Charlotte, holy smokes. I mean, a lot of people out there who are traveling. And so we've seen a lot of that. We've seen it with cruise lines. We've seen it with hotels where we're able to see that kind of data, especially the ones that are publicly traded out there, where we can see that. I mean, it's just been amazing to see the intensity of travel. Southwest, though, is not as rosy looking forward. They're looking towards the end of the year. They're looking into calendar year 2024, ready or not, going to be here in less than a quarter. Hard to believe that. But they're looking into it not with the same kinds of rosy expectations that they have here over the last couple of years. That's interesting. That's another data point with regards to how consumers are spending. They list any number of factors. They talk about inflation. They talk about discretionary income for the folks who would be traveling. That would be more the pleasure side of things. On business travel, they expect that to be relatively flat to where they are this year. So that, again, that's very, very interesting. You can see, and as a previous listener here to Dollars and Cents, watch the consumer closely. We want to know what the consumer is spending, how much they're spending. Do they feel confident in spending? Do they lack confidence in spending? What are they doing otherwise? Very, very important. So we're watching that. And that was kind of interesting to hear that from Southwest. All right. Going to one, now, as you're listening to hot headlines here on Dollars and Cents, we spend a fair amount of time talking about food, and I do that intentionally. I love to eat. I know producer Bill loves to eat. He's an aficionado. The Chief Justin, he's a foodie as well. So the next one, Hershey. Now, producer Bill, are you a candy bar kind of guy? Are you candy overall? I guess I should say that.
I'm pro candy.
You're pro candy.
Candy.
I'm glad to hear that, because otherwise we would have had to end our relationship here. Right. But Hershey came out with their quarterly earnings as well, and came out actually in a very rosy kind of way, meaning that very strong earnings, very positive, forward-looking growth estimates. Now, we're talking about a large, old company, so we're not talking about a tech company here. We're not talking about double-digit earnings growth expectations. So a little bit different, certainly from other kinds of companies that we'll be talking about here in a moment. But still good to see. Still good to see that, and I'm glad folks still have good taste. Hershey's not the only one out there. There are several other excellent candy companies as well, but I, for one, am very thankful that Hershey does what they do. And producer Bill, have you ever been to Chocolate Town? Have you ever been to Hershey, Pennsylvania? Ever seen that setup? I mean, it's impressive.
Yeah, I've been right outside of it.
Okay.
A couple of lacrosse tournaments up there, but yeah, haven't been inside.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it literally, you're walking by, you can smell.
Right. I don't want to know who I'm going to become once I'm in there. I mean, you'll see a plus 30-year-old guy go to little kid mode.
You know what?
You'll lose me.
It's understandable. I mean, the smell is captivating,
Right.
and it literally is everywhere. It permeates the air, because that's where a significant amount of the production for Hershey's candy takes place. So very impressive kind of setup there. And again, not a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold. They just really make good candy. All right, in my opinion. Moving on here. Meta and Google, and I'm going to lump them together. So Meta, the old Facebook, Google, now known as Alphabet. I really should use them by their appropriate names. But I'm lumping them together, A, because they are large database technology companies, obviously social media emphasis for both of them. But both of them, very, very interesting. And I'm drawing the dichotomy here, especially coming off of talking about Hershey, because Hershey came through positively. And looking at Meta and Alphabet, or the old Facebook, the old Google, and looking at their earnings, frankly, and I looked at the white papers, I read the scripts of the earnings calls. Frankly, I thought their numbers were pretty good, not only in terms of the revenue growth and earnings growth, but I thought, in terms, especially with where expectations were for both of those companies, I thought they were both reasonably good. And not to get too far down the path, but I mean, Meta and Alphabet are unbelievably profitable companies, meaning their cash flow is, I mean, the only one that's bigger out there in my world is Apple. Apple almost prints money. It's no, they don't print money. Don't go around telling folks that said Apple prints money, but it seems like they do with the amount of cash that they have on hand. Google and Meta, or Alphabet and Meta, very similar in that regard in terms of just magnificent cash flow. So I thought their earnings reports are fairly good. Boy, the market didn't think so. Market took a hammer to both of them in various degrees right after that, primarily because of what they were saying about some notes of caution going forward. Now, it'll have to wait and see if it's going to be something that's going to actually play out. But definitely there were a couple of notes of caution with regards to the consumer, coming back to the consumer spending, and what we can expect going forward. That really put the market on edge a little bit. Now, let's give a little context to this as well. You heard me say about Hershey, it's a larger, older company. It's, looking for single-digit earnings growth kinds of things. Meta, Google, those kinds of large technology companies, they function on a little different plane. And I don't mean it's better or it's worse. It's just different. And so the expectations of those companies sometimes are, especially when they've done well, and both of them have done well again this year. If you look at their stock price, it's been a very, very good year. Now, last year was a very, very not so good year. So they had some recovery from that end of things, but still a very large amount of gain in a short amount of time. Sometimes when that happens, you're going to see companies pull back if things aren't perfect. And you've heard me talk about this. We think in straight lines. We do it. The investing public, we do. Things are going up. So long as everything is, quote, perfect, then the price is going to continue to go up or to increase. And when things aren't perfect, which, by the way, happens with every single company, because no company is perfect, right? In perpetuity, no matter what. They may have a couple of quarters, maybe even a couple of years in a row, but certainly nothing in terms of longevity with that kind of idea. So inevitably, you're going to have something pull back. So the pullback by the market, it could have been for any number of reasons on these two kinds of companies, because it's extended across the tech sector in a lot of ways as well. Now, you heard me talk about the tech sector a lot earlier in the year, especially as it was leading the way. You heard me talk about the dichotomy in the markets, or the two separate markets. We had the tech sector doing very well, and basically everything else, relatively speaking, almost forgotten, and in some cases notably negative for the year. This kind of recalibration, especially after a big run, is very, very natural. So I fielded a lot of calls, a lot of emails, a lot of concerns about, oh my gosh, what does this mean? The economy's going. Well, it doesn't mean anything in and of itself outside of the fact that the perfect expectations of the market weren't met. And that happens, especially after a stock's had a big run in pricing here. So it's important because these companies are huge. They have a huge impact over stock indices. They have a huge impact in terms of the funds that own them and the institutions that own them. So very, very important for us to keep that in mind. But it doesn't mean in and of itself that there's going to be this huge kind of pullback or anything outside of expectation. All right, let's keep going here. So when we're looking at, again, the quarterly report end of things, one of the things that we watch is our large freight companies. When I say freight companies, two big ones, especially here in the U.S. You got UPS and you got FedEx. And then there are others as well. I'm not diminishing the DHLs of the world or anything like that, but FedEx and UPS pretty dominant here in the freight movement business. And that's everything from a business envelope to large cargo on pallets that goes in big freight planes. So when looking at UPS came through with not as good of earnings report as we would hope. More concerning, though, is what they're looking at with the consumer. And as we're coming into the Christmas season, I know I keep pounding on this, but it's definitely something that we're going to keep in mind, making sure that we understand what the consumer intends to do. Well, friends, so we're going to take a few seconds here to hear from our sponsors while I catch a deep breath. I appreciate so much you listening to Dollars and Cents here on WSIC News Talk Now.
Dollars and Cents with certified financial planner Joshua Dobi will return after this short break on 105.9 100.7 WSIC.
Hello, everyone. This is Joshua Dobi from North Main Financial Group. We're blessed at North Main Financial Group that most of our clients come to us by referral. When folks have a good experience with us, they share that good experience with their friends, family, and colleagues. In doing so, when we're sitting with folks, then we're looking at their financial plan and seeing if it aligns with their goals and their desires for what yet lies ahead, be it college, be it retirement, or be it estate planning. If that sounds of interest to you, we'd love to hear from you. Reach out to us at northmainfinancial.com.
And now for a look at your weather forecast from the WSIC Weather Center. Sunny skies today, but that temperature is going to continue to get warmer. We're looking around 78 degrees by the time we get to the afternoon. As you head through the rest of the day into the evening, clouds will roll in. We'll have partly cloudy conditions and an overnight low around 54. This has been your weather forecast from the WSIC Weather Center.
Make your work easier with Eagle Rentals of Troutman and Statesville. Eagle Rentals has generators, heaters, fans, painting equipment, floor care equipment, pressure washers, lighting equipment, and lawn care equipment. Plus, Eagle Rentals has construction equipment like forklifts, bobcat loaders, backhoes, excavators, and more. Reserve online at eaglerentals.com. That's eaglerentals.com. The Ugly Antenna has now become a household name in this area. The Ugly Antenna allows those without a streaming provider to receive up to 50 channels absolutely free of charge, including Fox 46.1. The Ugly Antenna is small and connects directly to your TV. Get the Ugly Antenna for just $40. Call 704-682-1755. That's 704-682-1755 for the Ugly Antenna.
Folks, you know Randy Marion sells vehicles the King of Price way, but did you know our service department? We service vehicles the King of Price way. We sell tires, we sell brakes, we sell batteries, we sell the maintenance. We help you keep your vehicle on the road safe, ready to drive. Whatever the season is, Randy Marion service departments have you covered. Come see us today because, folks, again, you know we sell the King of Price way and we do service the King of Price way.
King of Price, RandyMarionStatesville.com.
Todd Stearns here. Stay on top of the local elections by listening to WSIC. Great folks like Senator Vicki Sawyer, Representative Jeff McNeely, and join me for national election coverage weekdays noon to 3 on WSIC.
This is Fred Lowry at Lowry Drug. We now have our own brand of full-spectrum hemp extract, also known as CBD oil. I personally manage this product as it was grown on my farm here in Iredell County. It was then processed and bottled here in Statesville. This is a true herbal extract with all the medicinal components intact. A product you can trust to be authentic. And since there is no wholesaler, it's at a price you can afford. Try it at Lowry Drug on Hartness Road in Statesville.
Dollars and Cents continues now. Here's your host, Certified Financial Planner Joshua Dobi on 105.9 100.7 WSIC.
Hello and welcome back to the second half of this week's version of Dollars and Cents. I'm your host, Joshua Dobi. Thank you so much hanging with us into the second half. It's football season. You're going to get constant football references here. I'll tell you, if they would let me do it, and they would because they're so sweet here at WSIC, they might let me do it. I could probably talk football for the whole hour. You may even like it. Although Joe Berg, our senior sports editor, may not be as enthused about that kind of thing because I'm nowhere near the expert that he is on all things sports, but I certainly do love football season. But we got the NBA started as well. We're going to get college basketball fired up here. I mean, it's kind of that confluence of time. We still got baseball sitting out there. We got hockey that's fired up here. So I mean, it's good to be a sports fan right now. I like it. So, all right, second half of this week's Dollars and Cents. And producer Bill, I feel like I need to because we do like to talk all things food here. It doesn't really matter what the subject matter is. I do try to wrap it into things that are financial and economic. Sometimes a little challenging to do that, but that doesn't keep me from talking about food. I think it's important since Halloween is next week that we talk about the price of candy. Now, we talked about Hershey's earnings. They came out with some pretty rosy earnings and some pretty confident numbers in looking forward. I got a couple of data points for you, Producer Bill. There is expectation that in terms of candy prices, meaning the cost of buying candy, were probably, for any number of reasons, mostly linked to inflation and commodity prices, going to be paying all-time record high prices, and that, at least in part, is due to these data points. So cocoa futures, so that primary ingredient in chocolate, all right, chocolate-based kinds of things, hit a 44-year high here over the last week. 44-year high. Now, the measurement of this, producer Bill, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this. The measurement of cocoa is done by the metric ton, meaning that the standard measure for cocoa is a metric ton. I'm trying to envision in my head what a metric ton of cocoa looks like. I mean, that's got to take up a lot of space. I mean, we're not talking about a heavy thing, right? I mean, that's a lot of cocoa.
Right. We got to get that into the studio.
I think that's
right.
That's wonderful. Well, the first thing we got to do, and we could talk to the Chief Justin about this. First thing we got to do is buy it. And
at record high price?
Yeah, $3,786, $3,786 for a metric ton of cocoa. I would love to have a metric ton of cocoa here.
Yes.
I'm thinking about things like putting it in hot water with marshmallows and having that along here, or adding it to my coffee, because I drink coffee nonstop, and put cocoa in it too for a little chocolate flavor.
Like that.
So anyhow, but yes, record high. So we're in the Halloween season here, and Halloween is. You'd be surprised at the billions of dollars, and that's billions with a B, the billions of dollars that are spent here in the country, in the U.S., with regards to the Halloween holiday season. I mean, it's amazing. I'm not just talking costumes. I'm talking parties. I'm talking food. I'm obviously talking candy. I mean, it's intense. And so we're talking about, again, with higher prices now on all things chocolate. That must be why Hershey's feeling pretty good about where they are. So now, Bill, are you chocolate candy guy, or are you more the sweet, like crunchy candy, or you have no biases?
I don't have any biases, but
Yeah.
I will tend to pick up a Hershey or some M&Ms.
Yeah, like Hershey, M&Ms, Reese's.
I'm weak.
I
What
am
can I
too.
say?
You know what? And then especially when you combine those, like chocolate and peanut butter,
Now-
or you do the sweet salty thing, let's say with pretzels or potato.
I'm going to ask you kindly to stop.
He's so nice. Producer Bill's so nice. Like, get back on subject here with what we're talking about. All right, but it is good to think about, and it is Halloween. So we're talking about those kinds of things. But we're talking about hot headlines, talking about those kinds of things that are might be hitting your radar screen. Certainly, they're hitting our radar screen here at North Main Financial. If you'd like to give us a buzz here in the studio, talk about some of the hot headlines that you're seeing, things subject-wise that you may want to see, always happy to hear from you. Can't promise we're going to get it in this particular show, but certainly it'll be on my radar screen, because we want to bring you the kinds of things that you want to know. 844-STUDIO-4. That's 844-788-3464. One more time, 844-788-3464 here in the studio if you'd like to chat about something in particular that's on your radar screen. All right, we're going to pivot here a little bit. We're going to go to a segment, really, we've called it What to Know. And when we talk about what to know, obviously that's a very broad and intentionally broad kind of rubric, grammar folks out there, in talking about what we're going to look at next. But we're obviously talking about things financial and economic. And we try to make the subjects here for this particular segment, try to make them pretty broad. And that's intentionally so, meaning the kinds of things that many of you may be engaged with, or have engaged with it previously, or perhaps there's something coming up in your future where you're going to be doing. We've talked about, for example, about Social Security. We've talked about 401ks and retirement accounts. And today, in the What to Know segment, we're going to be talking about life insurance. Now, again, you got to hear from me, and I know I say this a lot, but inevitably, I'll hear from somebody. Well, what is it? No, that's not in it. It's not a recommendation, right? It's not that everybody should have life insurance, or that everybody shouldn't have life insurance. This is just a reflection on what life insurance is in very broad-based terms. Life insurance, if you don't know, and I think most of you probably do, but life insurance is something that insures, or a policy that insures, somebody's life, meaning that if somebody passes away while the policy is in place, there is a death benefit, which is paid out by an insurance company. And to have that policy, you pay a premium, or a series of premiums, or a series of payments in order to be able to sustain that policy. Now, there are three major types of life insurance policies. You've got term insurance, you've got universal life insurance, and you've got whole life insurance. And they're all very different, meaning that how they're structured, and there are several different variations on each of those three as well. So I'm giving you the broad-based terms. You may have something that doesn't fit maybe that nomenclature about a style of policy, but it probably fits under one of those three: term, universal life, and then whole life. Let's start with term. It's the easiest one. Term is pretty straightforward. That's usually with a defined number of years, not always, but it usually has a defined number of years that the policy is in force if you continue to pay the premiums in the ways which are required. Could be 5 years, could be 10 years, could be upwards of 40 years when you're paying the premiums on that term policy. And if you happen to pass away, if you are the insured person or the insured person happens to pass away during the time when that policy is in force, then the death benefit, as outlined in the policy, will pay out to the beneficiaries, as indicated by the insured or the owner of the policy. Can be two different things, by the way, and will pay out at that time if it happens to happen during that term. Now, if you have a 10-year term policy and you get to the end of the 10-year term and you decide not to either convert it or to renew with a different style of policy, and the insured happens to pass away 11 years afterwards, then no benefit pays out. So like I said, it's during that term. Term tends to be the least expensive option, relatively speaking, in terms of cost. It's not always true, but generally speaking, most often term insurance, term life insurance, tends to be the least expensive. On the other side of that, you pay for just literally what you get. There are no savings components, there's no cash accumulation, there are no dividends paid. It is literally you pay for that coverage for a certain number of years, a term that you have that policy in place. All right, we got term. I'm going to lump universal life and whole life together for just a moment because it's going to be easier to think about them just in terms of 2 parts instead of 3 for what I'm going to say next. With universal life and with whole life policies, sometimes they are called permanent insurance. What that generally means is, according to the structure of your particular policy, so long as you pay the premium required, that policy will stay in force as long as you're alive, meaning that it will stay in place, again, as long as you pay the premiums, which are outlined in the policy. It will stay in place until you pass away. So not a term policy, meaning it's not just for 10 years or for 20 years or for 30 years, but rather it will stay in place so long as you pay the premiums until you pass away. Now, you can probably guess that because of that, those policies tend to be a little bit more expensive, meaning those policies have higher premiums associated with them. Doesn't make them right or wrong, good or bad, just makes them different as far as how they're put together. In addition to that, with universal life, and then certainly with whole life, you're talking about the possibility for cash accumulation inside of the policy, sometimes called a cash value. Sometimes folks look at it as a savings component inside of the policy. So a little bit different, certainly than a term policy. You have a savings component associated with it. But of course, in order for that to take place, you have to pay a larger premium or a more expensive premium. Also, with whole life policies, many whole life policies, they will pay out what are called dividends, meaning dividends because of your ownership of the policy, which may pay a part or even all of your premiums. As a matter of fact, we look at whole life, when we look at old whole life policies, which some of our clients have, in some cases, the dividends pay all of their premiums, especially if they've held the policy for a good long time. So it's very important to understand the differences. It's very important to take a look at, A, whether you need life insurance at all, and then B, if you're going to own life insurance, if you determine that you have a need, then what kind of policy works out best for you? And then folks say, well, how do I know if I have a need? Well, lots of definitions there, and you'll probably get as many different answers as there are financial advisors out there. But let me give you just a very broad sketch of what we use at North Main Financial. Recognize first, and you hear me say this caveat all the time, but recognize first that everybody's situation is different and unique. So when we're talking about here what to know, this is just broad-based kinds of things. Definitely want to take a look at it with your tax advisor, your financial advisor. You can reach out to us at northmainfinancial.com as well. But when we're taking a look at, well, do I have a life insurance need? We often start with 3 big items. Doesn't always fit here, and often we're expanding beyond this whenever we're talking with folks about a life insurance need, but we talk about 3 big items. 1, if the insured passes away, is there a need to replace income? Meaning that is the insured the breadwinner, or does the insured supply income for the family, or are there folks who are dependent on that income that if it goes away that they're going to need to have it replaced? Second big item is debt, mortgages, car loans, student loans. We often talk about a desire and maybe even a need to pay those off in the event that the insured passes away. And then the third big item, this has to do with folks who have kids. Are there college expenses that you'd like to cover off on? We include that as one of the considerations because that number is so big. Meaning that when we're talking about, especially if you have multiple children, if the breadwinner passes away, do we want to have an allotment for college expenses? So debt, replacement of income, college expenses. If you have kids, that's where we begin to think about whether there's an actual life insurance need. And then, do we look at term insurance? Do we look at universal life? Do we look at whole life? What makes the most sense? What fits the place best for the client, where they are, with regards to the cost and benefit of what it is that we're considering? Well, I appreciate your attention on that. It's important. Life insurance is important, not for everybody, but definitely important as part of an overall financial plan. You're listening to Dollars and Cents Cents here on WSIC News Talk Now.
More of Dollars and Cents with certified financial planner Joshua Dobi on the way from the new 105.9 100.7 WSIC.
Here's your WSIC community calendar. The WSIC yard sale is this weekend. Come by the radio station and enjoy a day of fun. The world-famous Pat Shannon will be hosting a special edition of the Home Ad Show. Live music, food trucks, bouncy houses. Selling starts at 6 a.m. this Saturday. Yard sale spots are free. The WSIC Yard Sale, 1117 Radio Road in Statesville. Saturday from 6 a.m. until 2 p.m. Pumpkin picking at Kerrigan Farms. Experience the pumpkin patch at Kerrigan Farms by booking your experience now at KerriganFarms.com. KerriganFarms.com for a pumpkin picking adventure. Santa is coming to town. Schedule your time to take pictures with Santa at Birkdale Village. Spots are limited and must be scheduled in advance. Santa will be at Birkdale between November 19th and Christmas Eve. Appointments include time with Santa and 8 digital images from a professional photographer. For more info and to schedule your time with Santa, visit BirkdaleVillage.com. Want to enjoy a night of magic? Eric Jones, a worldwide award-winning magician, is coming to Kane Center for the Arts this Saturday. Buy your tickets before they sell out. KaneArts.org. Eric Jones, the Magician, this Saturday. Doors open at 7 p.m. KaneArts.org. Have an event you'd like to tell people about? Yard sales, estate sales, and everything in between? Visit WSICnews.com and click on Events to submit your event today.
The Renaissance Festival is back Saturdays and Sundays now through November 19th. Save your dates. Don't miss the Renaissance Festival. Tickets available online only at renfestinfo.com while supplies last.
And now for a look at your weather forecast from the WSIC Weather Center. Sunny skies today, but that temperature is going to continue to get warmer. We're looking around 78 degrees by the time we get to the afternoon. As you head through the rest of the day into the evening, clouds will roll in. We'll have partly cloudy conditions and an overnight low around 54. This has been your weather forecast from the WSIC Weather Center.
Revitalize your landscape with ease. Experience hassle-free transformations with Drum Landscape Supply's swift and reliable delivery service. Visit drumlandscapesupply.com today. Drum Landscape Supply, your local one-stop landscape shop.
Call now to speak with certified financial planner Joshua Dobi at 844-STUDIO-4. It's Dollars and Cents on WSIC.
Hello and welcome back to Dollars and Cents presented by North Main Financial. I'm your host, Joshua Dobi. We're on the fourth quarter stretch run here. If you're a 9 to 5, or you could taste it at this point, right? 11 and a half minutes. You're practically there. Sprint through though. Don't quit on me yet. Don't quit on me yet here at Dollars and Cents either. I appreciate so much you hanging with us here, listening to what we're talking about. We're talking about things financial. We were talking about what to know there in the last segment, talking about life insurance. It's not for everybody, but it can be for some folks who are in specific needs and have a need for that kind of thing. And then we were talking hot headlines before that. We got plenty of them. They're just about as many as you can count out there right now, at least on my radar screen. And certainly during earnings season here, talking about what companies are doing. And most importantly, food companies. And we were talking about the price. No, it's not saying that food companies are most important. We just like talking about food here at WSIC. But here in the fourth quarter, we always talk about the markets. I like to close out here towards the end of the show, talking about where the markets are, talking about what we see. I got to mention a data point. Producer Bill brought it up here at the front end of the show before we went on the air. And I got to say it, and I got to put it out there. And then obviously you can tell by the tone of my voice, and if you're watching us on the socials, you can see my body language that I'm definitely not leaning too hard into it because it is so far outside of beta or outside of expectation. We got a GDP number this morning, and we got unemployment figures. They were pretty much in line, so I'm going to skip over them pretty quickly. But we got a GDP number growth-wise, which was way outside of expectation. It wasn't even close. And that's unusual, especially with how hard the Federal Reserve has been raising rates, meaning how much they've raised rates here over the last 18 months, to get a growth figure like what we got this morning, it just doesn't fit. It doesn't align real well. And you know me, I'm not going to make a macro out of a micro. It is a data point, but I got to say it. It's GDP growth year over year, 4.9%. 4.9. I mean that's hot, and I mean that in the I guess in the metaphorical sense, because there's not a temperature component associated with it, but but it was way outside. We were looking at 2.5 here at the previous reading, and we were right around that expectation, so almost double. So we're watching that. The market definitely didn't like it because there was an expectation that with that kind of GDP growth figure, that they were going to need to continue to step on the hammer as far as raising rates, in addition to what they've already done. So the market definitely didn't like that in looking at that number. But it's one data point. So I'm watching it. We're watching it here at North Main Financial. I got to toss it out there to you because it just was an anomaly. It just didn't fit anywhere close to expectations. So, and as you know, what we do here at Dollars and Cents, we watch those data points and we look at them together. So that if we get something that's really hot on the next one as well, then now we're starting to build a trend in a certain direction. So we're going to be watching that very closely. All right, markets. I don't need to tell you, especially if you're a more aggressive investor in the equity end of things, specifically if you have been investing in technology or technology companies or technology funds. The early part of this year, for the most part, not everybody, for the most part, pretty fun, right? Numbers going up, increasing, kind of nice. Now you had a miserable 2022, so you need to make up some ground. But the front end of the year was pretty nice. Actually, the first half, a little bit more than that, even to the end of July, was pretty fun. Boy, if you came in the first week of August until right now, about mid-October, it's been miserable. It has been, especially those things that have been doing well. I mean, there are some things that have pulled back significantly. I was looking at a white paper here this morning talking about the clean energy industry. So I'm looking at solar companies. I'm looking at wind companies. Just been hammered. And that's not surprising. The alternative energy companies tend to be highly leveraged, meaning they take out a lot of debt. That debt is much more expensive now because interest rates have risen so much. So you talk about a highly leveraged company with higher, significantly, dramatically 2, 3, 4, 5 times the increase in capital expense. The numbers aren't good because you're already talking about companies that probably aren't making a profit. At least most of them are not, that are in the solar and wind business. Whether you're talking about the technology end of things or they're in the manufacturing end of things in terms of producing the fans for wind, or if you're talking about producing solar panels. So whether you're on the manufacturing or the technology end of things, tend to be highly leveraged, tend to get hammered whenever rates go up, and we're seeing that. So that's been a pretty miserable end of that end of things. But what we have seen is some rotation here to other parts of the market, and specifically to things that are a little bit more considered to be more value oriented. Now, in saying that, I'm using some pretty traditional metrics when I'm looking at those kinds of things. I'm looking at things like consumer staples. I mean, we talked about Hershey, right? And that's not a consumer staple, but it's a consumer. It is a consumption item. I know I'm talking about food. It must be late in the day. I mean, I keep coming back to food, Bill. I'm going to have to talk to the Chief Justice. We're going to have to put like a jar of candy here, or maybe Diet Coke. I don't know what it is. I mean, if you got ideas, I'm open to.
You have to relax because I'm here all the time, and that is danger.
That's fair.
But I'm willing.
You're willing to be open to the idea.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to put it under a time lock or something, so that kind of like we do with pets. You only get so much food at certain parts of the day, right? Okay. Anyhow, I appreciate you.
I'll be standing by there.
Waiting for the time to tick by. Yeah, that's what I'd be doing. The same thing. All right. So, but when we're talking about the kinds of things that are out there market-wise that are doing a little bit better than what they were earlier in the year, we're starting to see some of that rotation, but not much. I got to bring up regional banks. And I'm bringing up regional banks for several different reasons. First of all, earlier this year, they obviously got pounded as we had the issues with Silicon Valley Bank and a couple of other banks, which were taken over by the FDIC. There was some extrapolation, is probably the best way for me to describe it, about other regional banks, smaller banks, not being able to sustain because of either large exposure to commercial real estate loans, concerns about whether they were able to attract additional loan business with needing to pay out so much in terms of deposit interest because rates had risen so much. So I don't want to get too into the weeds on that, but regional banks, frankly, have been hammered. And we've been watching them very, very closely because we're trying to pick out the wheat from the chaff, if you will. And it's been interesting to watch. Frankly, if you'd asked me about it earlier this year, I probably would have said that we would have had some recovery in the regional bank sector by this point, or at least we'd be moving in that direction. Not true. A lot of those down 20, 30, 40, 50% or more. And so that's a big deal. That's not the kind of thing that is particularly usual. But we're also seeing it with larger banks. So now I'm looking at Bank of America, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan Chase, the large, let's call them legacy style banks that are out there, also not having a particularly good year. And so we're looking at that, and we're looking at where we are interest rate wise. We're looking at what we're seeing in terms of some of the slowdown of consumer spending, not across the board, but definitely some of the slowdown in consumer spending, federal student loan payments coming back online. And so we're approaching this with caution. And I know you've heard me say that. I'm going to keep saying it. Maybe it's always true. I can't disagree with you there, that we're always cautious. But let me say it from the standpoint that we see that there could be some headwinds, which would really cool things off a little bit from where we are. And so we're watching that. And then you get outlier data points like what we had with GDP this morning. You're like, okay, that doesn't really go together with anything else that I'm saying here. And that's true. And that's why we don't get too moved by those outlier data points unless we get some other outlier data points to start to line up with and we start to build a trend. And so that's why we watch it so closely. So coming into the fourth quarter here, we're watching the consumer very closely. You've heard me talk about the consumer pretty much nonstop today. And I do that for a reason. I do that because it's so indicative of where we are as an economy, where the confidence level is, and what we can expect in terms of company earnings going forward. One of the things that we're watching very closely, you hear me talk about this, Christmas retail season, where are we going to end up? Are folks going to feel confident in spending for Christmas retail season? Are they feeling the pinch from a cash flow standpoint? So they're going to be more modest in terms of what they're buying. It's not the only marker, but it is a marker in determining a little bit about where the consumer is. So we're watching that very closely. We're going to start getting that data. Halloween next week. Producer Bill, I feel like we almost skip over Thanksgiving anymore. And I like Thanksgiving primarily because of the food. But I love Thanksgiving. But once Halloween decorations get put away, I can't even say that. I went into, what was it, Lowe's, Home Depot, Christmas trees.
Yes.
Literally in the front. As soon as you walk in, Christmas trees.
Right.
They're skipping right over Halloween. They're already done with it.
Right.
Already. We haven't even had it yet. We're not even. I feel like Thanksgiving's getting blown over a little bit.
Oh, I won't miss it.
I will not miss it.
Yeah, I'll be there.
I'll miss a lot of things, but I will never miss dinner. There's no doubt about that. Anyhow, so we're going to get into it though. We're going to get into Christmas season. We're already in it. What are we talking about? We're already in it. But certainly in terms of consumer spending and the kinds of things that are up high on the radar screen from a consumption standpoint, because so much of that is indicative of where we are GDP wise in our country. So, all right, let's do a wrap here because we're getting to the end of this week's show. But I want to spend a couple of seconds in talking about just where, again, market wise things are, and I want to look at interest rates. Now, you've heard us talk about this a lot, and for the obvious reasons, right? We're at a space interest rate wise now. We haven't been here in almost 2 decades. And we knew that this was going to happen. And I don't say because we have some great knowledge that nobody else has. That's not what I'm saying. But when the Federal Reserve came out about a year and a half ago and said, basically, here's where we're going, hold on. Those are my casual words. That's pretty much what it's been. We've moved more in interest rates here over the last 18 months at the speed that we've moved more than any time in our history. And that's big. Now, it's great if you're looking at high-yield money markets or CDs in terms of, now finally getting some ROI on those kinds of things. I was just looking at CDs on behalf of a client here just shortly before I came on air here today. We're looking at one-year CDs that are north of 5.5%, sometimes even 6%. And when we're looking at that, and we're looking at, okay, well, now it's because inflation has been higher primarily because of the rapid rise in interest rates as pushed by the Federal Reserve, but it's out there. Money market rates, 4%, 5%. Very interesting. Not everybody. We'll talk about that in a separate show here on Dollars and Cents about why not everybody can offer those kinds of rates. But we're seeing it in certain places. And so that changes the landscape. That changes where folks are investing their money. Now you can get some ROI in things like CDs and money market accounts. Perhaps some of that money was in the market, the stock market previously. So as you can see, it begins to shift the dynamic. And it creates a different landscape, frankly, one that we haven't had in more than a decade and a half. So very, very interesting. We're watching that dynamic. We're watching money flows to see what that means for the consumer and for the markets going forward. Well, friends, as always, it's a pleasure to be with you here on Dollars and Cents, presented by North Main Financial. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until the next time, I'll look forward to chatting with you soon.
The new 105.